Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to go live with the Fuqua School of Business. But before I get there, let's just quickly walk you through who we are. So we are the Red Pen. We are admissions consultants, and we offer a wide range of services from undergraduate preparation services to undergraduate, postgraduate, MBA, boarding school, and day school admissions counseling, along with career counseling. We have over 14 years of experience in education consulting with 1,000 plus admits to top universities across the globe. We have helped over 6,000 applicants, and we have a team size of 100 plus members across 9 nationalities. We have several professional memberships and affiliations, the most important for MBA admissions being AGAC, which gives us direct access to business schools and admissions officers, which is how Morgan is with us today. I am Anju Goyala. I'm a senior consultant with a Red Pen in their MBA admissions advising services. I have over close to 9 years of experience in the space. I have with me today my guest, Morgan Griffin, who is the Associate Director, Admissions at the Fuqua School of Business. Morgan joined the Daytime MBA team in 2018. In her role as Associate Director, Morgan oversees events for prospective students who want to learn more about the Daytime MBA program. In addition, she also works closely with prospective students from India and the Mid-Atlantic.
All right, everyone. I think Anju, she's going to join us again, so I'll let her hop back on maybe after we give this presentation. But just for the sake of everyone's time, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. But as far as today, we are going to be talking about a little bit about our culture here at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. That is something that really separates us from other programs. Our daytime MBA curriculum, our career and employment, and then we'll get to probably something you all are really eager to learn about, and that is our admissions process. So first, I always like to start off, and hopefully I have shared my controls correctly. So please let me know if you cannot hear this. If not, I'll skip through some of the videos we have. But one question I always get is, how do you correctly pronounce Fuqua? It's not a very common word that people come across in their day-to-day lives. But let me make sure. I think you all will be able to hear it. But here's a quick little video on how to quickly pronounce Fuqua.
It's not one qua, it's not two qua, it's a Fuqua. So my 10-year-old told me to remember how to pronounce the school's name. Fuqua.
Fuqua School of Business.
Fuqua Duke University's Fuqua School of Business.
Alrighty, hopefully you all were able to hear that. If not, someone feel free, you can drop in the chat. No, I couldn't hear that video, but the way you pronounce it is, it's not a 1 qua or a 2 qua, it's a few qua. So that is the correct pronunciation of how you pronounce the Fuqua School of Business. So I'll first touch on our culture and community. So our culture is something that really sets us apart from other business schools. And I think when you're looking at different business schools, you're going to notice that every school kind of has its own personality. And I think it's really important to keep in mind because that's where you'll be spending 2 years. You want to make sure that it's a place that you feel comfortable, that you align with their values, and it's a place you'll enjoy because 2 years can be a long time to not be very happy. So the first is we really believe in the diversity of people. We really look to have a diverse faculty, staff, as well as students. And we're looking for people that come from, as you see, diversity of experiences, so different experiences, different professional backgrounds, different cultures. All of those really help contribute to the fabric of what makes our school so different and so diverse, because you're going to learn from people who are vastly different from you. We don't want to have a class of people that are all the same. You won't learn much. We also believe in winning the right way. So it's not always who does the best job, who makes the most money, who makes the best decisions, but how did we get to that point? Did we do it the right way? And our team also, our culture is also the belief of moving teams forward. So we're very team focused. You'll probably hear a lot the phrase Team Fuqua, which really encompasses these kind of different values we have, but we really believe in teamwork, that a successful team will outweigh a successful individual. And so we really do believe in that mentality and that culture. And that's something that really, we see in the classroom, we see in the program structure and across faculty and staff as well. Also a little bit about our community. So we have very different, various student clubs that you can be a part of. There's no extra fee. There's no limit on how many you can join. But with business school, you are going to be very busy. You're going to be in class. You're going to be having, case studies. You're going to be doing recruiting. So I always say, it's great to be part of clubs, but you are going to have to find that balance of maybe clubs that you're very involved in, maybe clubs that you are kind of involved in when you have some extra free time. But we have a mix of professional clubs. Those would be your consulting club, your energy club, your tech club, those types of things. Then we have our diversity club, so our Association of Women in Business. We do have Indus, which is our club for South Asian students, those types of clubs, and then activity and leisure. So we do have a football or soccer club, depending on what you want to call it, the tennis club, the ski club, the hiking club, all of those things. There's still some learning to be done. Even if you're part of the beer and wine club, they're still visiting breweries to see how do you operate a brewery. So there is still some learning. And we really do believe it's important to be part of these clubs because of that learning that happens. There's a lot of learning in an MBA program that happens outside of the classroom, and it can be through these clubs. There's also opportunities to have leadership positions, to mentor, all those various different things. In addition, so many of our students are coming to school with spouses, partners, even children. And so we do have Fuqua partners for those who are coming with families. And so they're part of the MBA experience. It's a club they get to be a part of. So while maybe you're busy in class or at a recruiting event, we do some activities for them as well to help them feel like they're part of the community. I always say they get to do the fun parts of the MBA, but make them feel very much a part of that community here at Fuqua. Let me just make sure if so next, and let me make sure, I just want to make sure people, if everyone can hear, and I'll actually talk through this because a lot of the stats you'll see in this video, they're more, this was made for our Duke undergrad, which is a really great thing, but it gives you a sense of what does Duke look like? What does Durham look like? So I'll play this video. And I might kind of talk through some things, but we are located in the Research Triangle Park of North Carolina, so very central. This is kind of a look at our campus. Duke basketball, we're really, really big into basketball. There's kind of an overhead shot of the university. You can see lots of Gothic architecture. That's the city of Durham. So we're very close. We are still in a city. It might not be New York or San Francisco or anything like that, but we are still very much in a city that's very much growing. Apple is building its East Coast headquarters here in Durham, North Carolina. We have the Research Triangle Park, which is home to a lot of startups, companies, tech companies as well. So very much, students are able to access all these different parts. You don't have to have a car to be in Durham, North Carolina. There's lots of public transportation. A lot of our students live very close within walking distance to campus. We have Ubers, Lyfts, all those different things. But this is just kind of a look at our campus. Again, it's a very beautiful campus. We are very close to Cameron Indoor Stadium. The Fuqua School of Business is, and so that's really nice when you want to go to a Duke basketball game. We're right across the street from Cameron Indoor. So we have a really great location. This is the Sarah P. Duke Gardens. Absolutely beautiful to walk through. And as you can see, that chapel, that's our kind of iconic building here on Duke's campus. That is East Campus, where most of our undergraduate students live. And you can kind of see some little bit more of Durham, North Carolina there. So I will continue on because we could probably watch this video. I could tell you everything there is to know about Durham, but I know our time together is limited. So a little bit about our daytime MBA program. It is the typical 2-year full-time MBA program. It's the business core curriculum. We have 100 plus electives. The great thing about our structure is you get to start your electives in your first year during the spring term, which we feel like we've structured that way. So that way you can take some of those electives, things you're very interested in before doing your internship in between your first and second year. We do have a dedicated career resources. We'll get to that a little bit later, but we have an entire team that's there to help you through the recruiting process for your internship and post-MBA jobs. As I mentioned, the extracurricular, all those clubs. And we are STEM designated, which means that there is additional 2 years of work in the United States, so 3 years of work, which gives you multiple chances to apply for a H-1B visa. The key is while our program is STEM designated, it gives you that, it's also, in order to qualify for that extra 2 years, you do need to find, or you would need to work in a job that is STEM designated by a company. That's not something we have a lot of control over, but you don't have to take any additional courses or anything like that. Our entire program is STEM designated. We're actually one of the first business schools to have that, which is really exciting. We really have a deep commitment to that, especially when it comes to our international students. We know how important that is to them. So this is our class size. This is the class that didn't start like last week or the week before, but the class that started last year in 2023. So our class size, it can range anywhere from 385 all the way up to 450. We are 45% women. As you can see, many partners. I know everyone's eyes are probably going down toward those dark blue box because it's natural for us when we're looking at applying to business school to think, I want to make sure I'm hitting the metrics. Do I meet all these different categories? And I think take in mind, this is the middle 80%. These GMAT ranges, it's also the legacy GMAT. So that's probably going to look a little bit different. These are not requirements for admission. This is what came, who we admitted into the class, who matriculated, and all of that and where that falls. So certainly you're not required to have a GMAT score in order to get admitted in that 670 to 760 range. So we'll talk a little bit about that during the admissions process when I talk about that, but just wanted to kind of give you a quick snapshot of what our school, typically looks like. Again, the work experience, that really can vary. I'll talk a little bit about that more, but again, these are not requirements for admission. This is just a look at our class and who has come in. As mentioned, we have a business core curriculum and electives. Those electives can count toward a concentration, a certificate. We also do have dual degree programs as well. And so these concentrations, you can do any combination of up to two, either 2 concentrations, 2 certificates, or 1 concentration, 1 certificate. But these are all the different concentration certificates you can take, not a requirement. We do ask it on the application. So you might put, I'm interested in fintech and marketing. We are not admitting you based on you completing those concentrations that you have to do it. You might get to business school and decide you want to go into energy and environment, or you want to go into finance or health sector management. So you can change your mind. We're asking that on the application just to kind of understand your story. Why are you wanting to come to business school? But you actually don't even declare a concentration certificate up till you graduate. So we'll ask that, but it's not that we're admitting you based on you completing that track. So keep that in mind. Here's a look at that curriculum. As mentioned, you'll have your core curriculum in Summer Institute, Fall 1 and Fall 2. And then as you can see in Spring 1 and Spring 2, that's when you can start taking your electives. And those classes would count towards the concentration and certificates. I also want to note with the concentration and certificates, it's not required to take one. You might come in and say, I want to take a bunch of different courses from different areas and just have a well-rounded MBA and get that general management. And that's completely fine. So you can use those electives however you would like, whether it's pursuing a concentration certificate or just getting that well-rounded MBA degree. Experiential learning. So I talked about this with our clubs. This is also another area where I say there's a lot of learning that happens outside the classroom. We have great professors. You're going to learn a lot, but sometimes getting that hands-on experience is really, really helpful and kind of gives you that, okay, here's what I can take from what I learned in the classroom and actually apply it and see it work. So we have our new ventures course, which talks, which is looking at, startups, those types of things. So if you have a new startup idea or want to go into entrepreneurship and innovation, that is something where you can kind of work on that in that space with a mentor and under the guidance of the Duke Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center. Next, we have the Global Academic Travel Experience. This is very popular with our students. So this is where you actually take a class. Well, let me back up. Usually there's a gate trip. And so every year that location changes. It's been in China, it's been in Latin America. The most recent one was in South Africa, Iceland, all these different regions. So every year they'll announce, hey, the gate trip this year is in, and for this audience, I'll just say is in Mumbai, India. And so what you would do is you would take a class, and that would be talking about all, doing business in India. What does that look like? All of that. And then after that course is done, so after that 6 weeks, you then go and take a trip for a couple of weeks to India, where you would then take what you've learned and actually go do company visits, meet with alumni, understand the culture there and this and that. So I think the next one is going to be South Africa again, I think. Don't hold me to it, but it does change every year. So it's not constantly going back, but that's a great way to learn about doing business on a global scale. Next is Fuqua on Board for those who are interested in managing nonprofits or social impact. This is where you get to act as a non-voting board member of a local nonprofit. And those nonprofits change every year. These aren't simulations or anything. This is an actual nonprofit that you get to work with. And learn that and get that hands-on experience. And then the second one that's really popular is the Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum, or as we'll say, FCCP. We use a lot of acronyms here, so my apologies if I say one and I don't explain it. Feel free to drop it in the Q&A or chat and say what you just said acronym. I don't know what that stands for, but Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum is a chance for you to work on an actual consulting project with a company. Again, these are not simulations. These companies change every year. The projects change every year. You work on a team of 3 or 4 people on a project during a term, and then you actually get to go present that to the company and provide your findings, your suggestions, and solutions. So again, that's really popular. It can be really big name companies. It can be smaller ventures. You do, when you're doing this program, you get to rank your top 3. So you'll get a look to see what the projects are, and you can put in a request for your top 3, and then you'll get assigned to one of those. We do also have the research centers. So we have 5 different research centers. And again, this gives students access if they're wanting to dive deep into things. So if they're interested in energy, they might work with EDGE. If they're interested in social impact, they'll work with CASE. Health sector management, they'll work with HSM. These centers, they help with recruiting. They bring in speakers. They host conferences, provide a lot of programming for our students. So you're able to access these centers right in Fuqua and kind of do a deep dive on things that you're interested in. So as mentioned, a big thing about getting your MBA is you are wanting to get maybe a different or a really great job post MBA. And so we have an entire team of career professionals who are here to help you, everything from career coaches to career fellows, sector directors. So we have sector directors that are part of all major industries, so general management, consulting, healthcare, technology, social impact, all those different things. And they're there to kind of help you. They're going to be the ones that are talking with you about, okay, what are you wanting to do? What have you come from? How should your search and recruiting process look like with internships as well as post MBA? We then have different staff that help with interview prep. We have our career fellows who are second-year students who can help with interview prep, walking you through like, hey, if you're going to go recruit for McKinsey or BCG, this is what you should be prepared for. This is what that is going to look like. So They're all there to help you, able to be accessed. The great thing about the Career Management Center is this is one that I always say, this is a lifetime benefit of coming to Fuqua. So even after you graduate, let's say you've gotten a great job at BCG in Atlanta or McKinsey in Atlanta, and you decide, maybe 5-10 years later, you want to make a switch and do something else, you can still come back to the Career Management Center, and they work with our alumni and helping them as well. So a great lifetime benefit, and you don't have to pay for it, which is really, really nice. So here's a look at our top 5 industries. Very common. I think a lot of people say, well, what about this type of consulting or that type of consulting? We could really dive into these numbers, but this is very general. So sometimes you might say, well, gosh, there's not a lot in healthcare. Well, it might be a healthcare consulting role, and that might more fall under consulting. So take this with a grain of salt. We do have our career report online that really goes in depth, but for the sake of this, we just kind of touch on big umbrella industries. And then here are the functions as well. So consulting, marketing, general management, finance, operations, and logistics. Median salary. So this was of the class of 2023. We haven't gotten the data. We tracked the data for about 6 months post-graduation. So we don't have the one for the class that just graduated, but of 2023, annual base salary, $175,000, that's US dollars, with a signing bonus of $30,000 US dollars. We have a vast alumni network. I will say, for the sake of this audience as well, our alumni network in India, we do have an India Regional Advisory Board. Our alumni there are very engaged with students. So a lot of times when our students are admitted, the alumni start asking, can we host them for dinner? Can we meet with them? They want to start helping and mentoring. So very strong network in India, very robust. And then also you have the Fuqua Alumni Network. And since we are part of Duke University, you also get access to the Duke Alumni Network. So think of how big that is. And so I always also like to throw out there, think your Fuqua network includes Tim Cook, Melinda Gates, Adam Silver with the MBA. So you do have some well-known alum in that mix that would immediately be part of your network that you would have access to. And so again, the Fuqua Alumni Network, 14% of our alumni do live outside the United States. I do think that is growing. I think a lot of people are, some people are going back home. They're in the US for a while. So I know I have some alumni in India that I work with that they were in the US for a long time, and then they decided to go back to India and maybe start a venture or bring their company or work in those offices to be close to family. So not uncommon. So the admissions process, probably why you've joined here. You want to know, okay, Morgan, I've opened the application, but what I really want to know is how do I get into Fuqua? Can you give me that magic code, that secret sauce of how do I make my application stand out? Keep in mind, we get thousands of applications every year. I would love to think I could read all of them. I do read applications. I sit on the admissions committee. We get a lot of applications. There's a lot of things that we factor in. I think the biggest thing I want to share with you before I show the next slide, which shows all of our requirements, is we take a holistic approach. So a test score is not going to outweigh a great essay or an impactful moment in your life or something like that. Your test score is a 3-digit number of a test you took in a timed environment. Not everybody tests well. There's no magic test that you need to get your application reviewed or to be admitted. I will share with you, I have said no to even interviewing people with the legacy scores of 770 and said, yes, we should admit somebody with scholarship with a 610. From India. So it really is your whole application that we're looking at. It is not just one data point. So with that being said, there are 6 data points that we look at when looking at your application. And the order of these is not determining rank of importance. It's just how we ask the questions and how we review it. So we're first going to look at your academics. So as mentioned, we're going to look at your test scores. So GMAT, GRE, executive assessment, focus, legacy, any of those we do accept. We have no preference. We want you to take the test that helps you the most in the admissions process and what you feel like really shows your abilities. Now, I know there's someone sitting there saying, Morgan, I've taken the GMAT multiple times. I've taken the GRE multiple times. This is not showing my abilities. That's fine. If I told you what my scores were, you would be like, okay, I'm in good hands. I'm not a big test taker. I'm not great at it either. And so that's why we're also going to look at your undergraduate record. We're going to look to see, did you challenge yourself? What did you do in undergrad? How did you perform? And we can also kind of gather some quant abilities from that. Some people will supplement their scores by taking MBA math, Coursera courses, HBX courses, any quant related courses to say, hey, I know I didn't do well in my test, but I'm willing to do what I need to learn the material to be able to perform well in the class and handle a quant rigorous program. We do not require any ESL language proficiency tests, so you don't need to send those. It actually creates more work for us, so you do not need to send those or worry about those. Work experience. The big takeaway is quality versus quantity. We don't need to see 5 jobs. We don't need to see, we're not so much focusing on how many years. We're more focusing on what was your impact in your role. So I always say probably the resume you use to get your current job is probably not the resume you're going to want to use for business school, because we want you to more highlight what has your impact been, what have your achievements been. I don't really need to know your day-to-day responsibilities, but what have you achieved? This is kind of your chance to kind of brag a little bit humbly about what you've done during, your career, and show that great career trajectory, all that. What have you done? So that's what we really want to see. The biggest thing is keep that to 1 page. I know sometimes it's hard if you've had more work experience. You might feel like, oh, I just got to get this in, but keep it to 1 page. There's plenty of opportunities in your application to share any organizations or leadership and involvement you're involved in. You don't need to put all your hobbies on there. There's additional space for that. Really use this space wisely for really talking about your work experience. In addition, there's a form you'll need to complete that is helpful. Make sure when you're putting together your application, those dates match. There's times that I've read applications and the years are completely different and role titles, and I'm like, which one do I use? Also keep in mind your resume, that 1-page resume, is the only component of your application that an interviewer will have if you're invited to interview. So you also want that resume to also be written that anyone who meets you could understand what you wrote in your resume. Next is leadership and involvement. So are you part of a cricket club? This can all go back also to undergrad as well. But what are things that you're involved in the community, any community service? If there are things that are not part of your job, requirements that you are doing extra, maybe you lead a Toastmasters club or something at your work, or you're part of a committee at work that's not part of your job, it's something that is extra that you're doing, you can include that as well. Next is essays. So we do have one that asks you about what is your short-term goal. So what are you thinking of doing post-MBA? What we're trying to understand is, why are you wanting to get an MBA? How do you plan on using this? We do want you to put some thought into this. We're not holding you to it. If you say that you want to be a consultant at McKinsey, and then halfway through the MBA, you decide, no, I don't even want to be a consultant, I want to go into sustainability, we're not going to come down and say, hey, you can no longer be at Fuqua because you said you were going to be a consultant. You're allowed to change your mind, but we just want to understand, as part of your story, what are you wanting to use an MBA for? What are you hoping to do immediately post MBA? And then we also ask you for kind of your backup plan. So let's say things don't pan out. What's kind of backup plan there? Then we have our iconic 25 random things about you. We love this essay. I could probably do a whole presentation just on the 25 things about you, but this is where you get to add personality to your application, where you're more than just a 3-digit number, you're more than just a resume. This is where we really get to understand you as a person. And so it is 25 completely random things, but we want to learn about you, what you're passionate about, what makes you tick, life experiences you've had that have shaped you, fun times, all of that. We don't want you really rehashing things on your resume. Like, if I was writing the 25 things, one of my points would not be, I work at Duke University. One of my points, if I wanted to change that, would be, I was raised a Duke fan. My mom went to Duke. I unfortunately did not go to Duke undergrad. I went to NC State, but I've still remained a loyal Duke fan to this day. But if they are playing NC State, I do cheer for NC State. I stay true to my alma mater, but you want it to be fun, talk about those things. You can include pictures and links, but that does count toward your 2-page limit that you have. Bullet that list. You don't need to put the prompt at the top, but do keep it to 2 pages, but have fun with it. This should be very reflective. This is not an essay that you can usually sit down in an hour and write. So take time to write it, include things. We do read it. I will say more likely than not, when I think back on someone's application, I don't remember their test score. I usually will remember one of their 25 random facts. So this is really where you can stand out. So if I was to say, this is the secret sauce, this is the code, this is where you can stand out to the admissions committee. This is where, if you're a consultant, you're like, oh, I feel like so many consultants apply to business school. This is where you can stand out from the crowd. So really keep that in mind, spend time on this essay. Then next, we are going to ask you about how do you plan to contribute to the Fuqua community or be involved? So we don't want our students just coming here, going to class, going home, doing those things. We want people involved. So what are 3 things? That could be life experiences, that could be professional experiences, that could be being involved in clubs and activities, bringing in guest speakers, whatever it might be. What are 3 ways you plan to contribute to Fuqua? And keep that 3 ways. This is a chance for you to show that you've done research at Fuqua, that, you're not just saying, oh, I want to be part of the consulting club, because there's consulting clubs at all business schools. So that essay could have been written for any school. So do keep that in mind. Next is your letter of recommendation. We only require 1 letter of recommendation. We do use the GMAT common letter of recommendation. So when you submit that person's name, they will get a populated or a form that they will complete and submit back to us. We do prefer that this come from a current manager or supervisor, but I always say when I'm giving these presentations, there's a giant asterisk with like a special note to that. There are a lot of scenarios that I can think of where that might not be the best person to write your letter of recommendation. So you might own your own company and you are your boss and manager. I would think that you would write yourself a great letter of recommendation, but unfortunately you're not able to write your own letter of recommendation. You might work for a family business and it might be your parents, grandparents. I'm sure they would write you a great letter of recommendation, but they're a little biased. You might have just switched jobs. You might have not told your manager that you're leaving. You might, there's so many different things. So the thing I want to stress is use your manager or supervisor. If you're not able to, still use someone in a professional setting that has worked closely with you. Also, don't sit there and think, oh, well, maybe I could ask the CEO of the company to write that. That will look really good. You want someone that really has worked with you. A title is not going to wow us because they're probably going to say like, yeah, they're a good employee. I can, look and see they've had great performance reviews, but they're not really going to be able to talk about you in like a setting and how you work with others. So also look at this as it doesn't need to be a flashy title. Someone that has worked with you and can say you're a great person to work with. Next is interview, and this is a component of our application that has changed this year. So this year, all interviews are being done by invitation only. So once you submit your application, we will then review your application. We are going to be releasing interview decisions on a rolling basis. That is not to say if you get an interview decision at the beginning of the let's use round 1. Let's say you apply in round 1. If you're part of the first batch of interview decisions that go out, that doesn't mean you're at the top of the list. That just means we got to read your application when we got to read your application. That the release of your decision is not a reflection of your candidacy, your status, anything like that. It's just, we usually as a admissions team, we just get a batch of files. And I know when I open my queue, I just start at the top. So usually it's like alphabetical order for me of reading applications. So just keep that in mind. Don't panic if you're like, oh, it's part of the last batch. That probably means I was an afterthought or something like that. It's not. If your last name starts with an S, if you were in my queue, you're probably going to be down a little bit lower on my queue of just reading things. And every person reads applications differently. Some people sort it differently. So just keep that in mind. But the interview, it's a 45-minute conversation, either with, if you do it here in Durham, it would be with an admissions fellow. If you did it virtually, it could be with a previous admissions fellow or an alum, or we do offer interviews in India in person as well. So make sure when you're completing your application, you do have different major cities that you can select. So make sure you select the city of where you would like to conduct your interview, because we will use that if we have alumni in that area that can do it, that can do your interview in person if you would like to meet with them. We've also added this year, there's the optional background information. And so, we'll ask questions of, are you a first generation college student, which means that you are the first in your family to go to college and complete college. And then, are you from a low income family background? And then we also ask about a lived experience. And this is a completely optional question that you can answer. But is there anything in your life that has shaped you into who you are today, that is maybe influencing wanting to go to business school or what you're wanting to do? So do keep that in mind. achievements, things like that. This is just a great place to share. If there's anything about your candidacy that you wish the admissions committee would know for context in looking in the rest of your application. You don't have to complete it. We admitted plenty of people that didn't complete it. We admitted people that did complete it. So it's there for you if you would like to share. These are our different application round deadlines. So as you will see, we will have interview decisions that are sent by, but interview decisions will be sent on a rolling basis. They're not all being sent on that date, and you'll see the final deadlines as well. I do want to note our early action deadline or our early action round, that is a binding decision. So if you are admitted to Fuqua, when you submit your application, you sign something that says, if I'm admitted to Fuqua, I will withdraw applications from all other schools and be matriculating to Fuqua. So it is binding outside of, scholarship and all that. If scholarship is really important to you, if you say, I can't go to business school unless the school gives me a $10,000 or $20,000, US dollar scholarship, early action might not be the best route for you because we do only award merit-based scholarships. So we're using your application as your application for scholarship. And that's the criteria. We can't really go on need-based or like, hey, I'd like to come, but I need this much money or anything like that. So keep that in mind. If scholarship is a real sticking point for you in saying yes to a business school, probably rounds 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 are better for you. We do award scholarship in all rounds. I do suggest that applicants apply no later than round 3. That's just to give you enough time to go through the visa, like a mad dash to the finish line. And I know this information will be shared with you, but this is the best way to get a hold of our office. You're welcome to talk to myself or any of my wonderful colleagues. Please stay in touch with us. We host lots of different events. We host different office hours as well. And so great way to stay in touch with us. We want to help you. So please reach out. I will say also as a thank you for listening to me ramble. And when you go to submit your application in the application fees section, you can just put, I attended the red pen presentation. It will kind of check in the background and you'll be good to go. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know Anju is back and she probably had a few things she wanted to share before her internet went a little bit spotty. So I will stop sharing my screen in case there was some slides she wanted to share.
Well, I was just in the middle of introducing you. I'm sorry about that. I have some internet issues today. I'm also just going to put this out quickly in case my internet kind of conks off again. I have my colleague here, Natasha, who is going to take this on from me and ask you all the questions. Morgan, I'm not going to go back to introducing you again, but I'm going to share a couple of fun facts about Morgan. When she was in high school, she was a surf instructor, and she did an extremely fun thing. She surfed with a dolphin. She also likes to run, and she enjoyed running Spartan races with her husband, and her husband proposed to her at the end of one of these races. What fun is that? Somebody has asked a question about dirham. I'm going to let, I think Morgan's covered a lot of that, but if she wants to summarize, 3 things about dirham, she can, but I am going to definitely talk about, I'm going to mention 3 things about Duke University. One, Duke is synonymous with basketball, and the basketball fans are famously known as Cameron Crazies for their passionate and creative support of the Blue Devils. The Duke University also has a Lemur Center. Yes, you heard that right. They have a lemur center, and they have the largest number of lemurs outside of Madagascar. The center is primarily focused on research and conservation efforts. The third thing, Duke has a network of underground tunnels beneath the university. They were originally built for utilities, but now they've become the stuff of student legend. Stories and explorations. It quite reminds me of Churchill's war rooms in London. Now, having said that, since I had prepared, I wanted to say my piece. we are going to go into the Q&A. Morgan, are you ready for the questions?
I am ready.
All right. So somebody asked about the, they said 3 things about Durham that you would like to say, and 3 things about the Duke Fuqua program. Now, you've covered that in details, but would you like to summarize it in kind of 3 points?
So I think 3 cool things about Durham is, 1, we were named the foodiest city of the region in the United States. So if you love food, we have great restaurants, great, nightlife. And so if you're really into food, lots of different food here in Durham. So really great restaurants. I'll also share it's very much growing. So as mentioned, we have various Fortune 500 companies, Apple, Nike, Microsoft, all located here. So you're not having to be in the crazy bustling cities to take advantage of working for some of those companies. Apple's in the process of building their headquarters here, which is really, really nice, especially for those that want to live in a city with a low cost of living. And then in addition, we have the Research Triangle Park. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship and innovation, startup, all those different tech companies as well, that is there for career opportunities as well. I would say 3 great things and 3 unique things about Fuqua is, as I mentioned, our curriculum structure. So being able to take those electives in your spring term and take that before you do your internship is really helpful, really prepares you for that and really make sure that's what you want to go into. I love, love, love our culture. I think the teamwork experience and mentality is just so great. It's really changed the way I even work, how I look at other companies' work. And I just think it's really special. And just to see that cultivate amongst our students is really unique. And I think our culture is so, unique and vast. I would also say another thing that I just think is really cool when you walk into the Fuqua building is you walk into the building and there are all these flags. And actually, usually I change my Zoom backdrop so you can see it, but there's a flag for every country that a student has attended from. And it's just really cool to see how vast and broad and diverse our student body is. To see all those flags, it's really just, you stand at the hallway and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's like hundreds of flags here. This is incredible. And I think it's just really special to see that. And just to know that that's the network, that's the team that you're a part of. And so, I think that is really cool. If I can even squeeze in a 4th really cool thing, just going back to basketball, is our students do get to participate in something called Camp Out, where they can be part of a lottery to earn season tickets to Duke basketball games. And our undergraduate students actually have the best seats in the house. So if you're ever watching a Duke basketball game, you see the Cameron Crazies, that's where you as a graduate student, if you are selected in the lottery for season tickets, would get to stand. Our dean is in the back bleachers, way up high, has to have binoculars to see the players, but our students get the best view and the tickets are free. So if you love basketball, there's Camp Out that you can be a part of, and just really a cool part. And the nice thing is for graduate Camp Out, it's just one weekend. You're not having to camp out for tickets for each game like undergrad. So you don't have to brave all the cold weather for weeks and all of that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. It's, there's a lot of play along with, the work that you have to put in for the MBA program. One of the first questions that came in was, do you offer a GMAT or a GRE waiver?
No, we do not. So we do still require a test score. When you apply, we only require an unofficial test score. If you're admitted, that's when we'd ask for the official score report, but we do not waive that requirement. We feel like it does still give us a lot of good information about quant abilities. And so we have no preference on what test you take, either the GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment, but no waiver.
All right, great. Somebody's asking, I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, somebody's asking about the application fee waiver. And I'm going to take this one up here. Duke is offering an application fee waiver to all of you who are attending this session today. So that's your bonus for today. All right. Jasmeet has asked a question. Will someone with 10 years of experience be eligible to apply for the daytime MBA program? Basically,
Yes.
someone who's on the other end of work experience.
Yeah, and work experience, again, I would think look at this as quality over quantity. So it's not that there's a certain amount you need to apply and be eligible. There's not a cutoff of, hey, that's too much. Sometimes people have 10 years work experience and just now they feel like right now is the right time to get an MBA. So there's not a requirement, not a cutoff, but I think in your resume explaining why is now the right time, you know, in not maybe in your resume, but you'll outline what you've completed in your resume. But then we do have the optional essay, which I did forget to mention. And that's where you can explain like, hey, I've had 10 years of work experience, but here's why now is the right time for me to get my MBA. But we've absolutely had people with 10 or more years as part of our 2-year MBA program.
That brings me back to the optional question, and somebody's asked a question on this as well, and they've said, if you don't mention anything, about, your lived experience and what has shaped you, is it going to impact your candidacy?
No, there's a couple of sections where I say if you don't complete it, it can hurt your candidacy, but that optional information, it is truly optional. If we say we're not, the thing I really appreciate about our admissions team is if we say optional, that's not a trick to say like, oh, but we really want it. We just want to see if you'll complete it. We truly mean optional. There are some things that might have happened in your life that are very personal that you don't want to share. We're not asking you to share your deepest, darkest secrets. In your application, share what you are comfortable sharing. We know that some of those things are very personal. It's there just if you want to provide that context. But if you leave like essays blank, if you leave leadership and involvement section blank, you're not completing the required components. That's where it can hurt your candidacy. But something that is optional, that is truly, truly optional and there for you to use if you would like.
So requirements are mandatory, optional is optional. Right. Somebody's asking if they've, had a gap in their work experience, if they've taken a 1-year sabbatical, how will the AdCom look at their application?
Yeah. And this is, I think a lot of people, we saw a lot of layoffs. I think COVID impacted some people's work experience. Some people take sabbaticals, medical leaves, various different things. And so this is where I would say, if you have that, you can't hide it. Put it in your resume. We'll see that there's a gap year. But usually when I'm reading an application, if I see something in the application, like if you've submitted a bunch of test scores and there's one that is like drastically lower or your grades really drop off, what I go and do is I start going to see, did they complete an optional essay? And did they, say like, hey, I had a really bad year in college because of a family medical issue or something I was dealing with. We kind of look to that to say like, okay, fill in the gaps for us. So when it comes to work experience, if there's a gap there, I would make sure to complete the optional essay. And it doesn't need to be a 5-paragraph essay on a gap year. It can be a bulleted list of several different things and just say, hey, I had to take sabbatical for this reason. That's why there was that 1-year gap. As long as you explain it, that's okay. Keep in mind the admissions committee, we've read a lot of applications. We've seen a lot of interesting stories. So we can, if you leave something there and you don't explain it, we can start telling ourselves and say, look, this is a story I'm going to tell myself of what they were doing. They came to Wilmington, North Carolina and went surfing with Morgan and swam with dolphins for a whole year. We don't know what you did. So we do want you to explain things and, just if there's something wonky like that, like a year off, and it could just be like you were laid off. The market was tough. It took you a while. That's completely fine. Just explain it to us. When you leave it and you don't explain it, that's when our minds start wandering.
Related question. Is it recommended to be employed while applying to business school, or is it okay to take time off to apply for an MBA program?
I think it depends. It depends on the candidate. It's hard for me to say like yes or no, because if you only had like 6 months of work experience and now you're off, I'm going to say, ooh, that's, what's going on here. But, sometimes people do, maybe that's just the time that they need. And that's fine. I would use the optional essay to explain it. But I do think, work experience, the reason why we look at work experience, the reason why that is a component of an application is because having work experience and having work experience at the time before applying to business school, think about before I get into this, is you're going to be able then to contribute to the conversation and pull from experiences of like, oh, when I worked at ZS Associates, or I worked at Schlumberger, you can pull from those experiences. Think about it this way. Let's say you were applying in 2019, 2020, and you had said, oh, I'm going to take a year off to apply to the MBA program, and you missed the impact of COVID in your industry, you might have sat in the classroom like, oh, I didn't know what Schlumberger did during COVID or what ZS associate did. So it's also helpful to kind of understand the context of the world that's happening right now and it works. So I think if you can, great. If not, it's okay. We've admitted people that have taken, some time to prepare and work on their applications. But again, I would just use that optional essay to explain it. But just keep that in mind, that work experience, that's where that's really helpful, is being able to come into the classroom and pull from experiences and talk about different things.
There's a question about the job market, the US job market, since it's slowing down this year. What impact are you expecting, in terms of the job available, especially for international candidates?
Yeah, I think, usually when the job market goes down, that's when MBA admissions, we start saying like, all right, here comes everybody, because they want to park themselves for 2 years in a safe environment. And so, any school is going to have its challenges right now. That's the job market situation is not specific to Duke or Fuqua or just even international students. Every school is going to see this. And that's where it's important to think of, again, your team that you're going to have. And so we do have our career management center, and they are going to be there to help you and to navigate. They're going to know what companies are going to hire and not hire, that have slowed down, that haven't slowed down. I think for a while we saw a lot of tech layoffs because during COVID, before COVID, they had overhired in the tech industry, and COVID happened, and no company wanted to be the company that was going to do tech layoffs. So they just kind of kicked the bucket down the road. And then all these tech layoffs were happening once, people were able to do work. So I think it's also understanding the context of things. But the Career Management Center, they're the ones that really work with recruiters. I know all the Indian applicants that I've worked closely with, that they graduated, they got jobs. Did it maybe take a little bit longer? Sure, but that's a company thing, not a Fuqua thing. And so I think keep in mind of what are the resources you're going to have. And that's when you start looking at MBA programs, you think about, we have a team of sector directors that are experts in that industry. They've navigated tough job markets before in the US. We had a tough job market in 2008 with the housing crisis, the tech bubble, the dot-com bubble, all of that. And, our students still find jobs. And the job market might be tough now, but in 2 years, that could look very, very different too. So, but our sector directors, they're going to know what companies are hiring. And that's where they might say, if you came in, you said, I want to go work for BCG. Let's say BCG is cut back on hiring. They're going to say, BCG might be tough. Maybe we go for a McKinsey or a Deloitte or somebody else who is hiring a lot. So, again, this is not just something for international students. I think international students have more of the concern about H-1Bs and all that. We do also have a sector director that is just for international students. So he also looks at not only recruiting, but recruiting for international students, and like what are companies that not only are hiring, but doing H-1B sponsorships, STEM designations, all of that as well.
Right. Thank you so much. There's a question around, again, around the job market, but I think you've covered a lot of it. I'm just going to ask the part that is not covered. And also Venkat has asked, with Raleigh relatively close by how much does the location help with jobs as well as gaining experience? I guess he's talking about internships.
Yeah, so I think for the longest time, it was thought if you wanted to go into finance, you had to be in New York City. If you wanted to work in tech, you had to be on the West Coast in California. I think COVID changed so much of that, even more than it was already changing, because now a lot of recruiting can have, some companies, they'll come to campus and still recruit traditionally. But some companies are just doing virtual recruiting. A lot of our students, in fact, as Anju mentioned in my bio, I helped to put on some of our off-campus events. And the last 2 or 3 years, I've had an issue because I'm like, oh, this person's working for, let's say Amazon, and we're wanting to do an event in Seattle. Let me see if they'll come join us. And like, no, actually, my internship's virtual. I'm in Durham. I'm not even in, on the West Coast. I'm like, oh, gosh, I thought, so a lot of students are actually staying, doing some, virtual experiences or doing in person. They're still offered, doing some of those. the location doesn't really play a role. You're still going to, we still have students that go to New York, that go to the West Coast, that go to Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, everywhere. It's sometimes about your role. And some people are like, hey, I'd like the virtual, or maybe the headquarters is in a major city, but then like Deloitte has offices here in North Carolina, and they might say, I'd rather pay cheaper rent in North Carolina than go to a big city and pay that expense. So, certainly, location hasn't been an issue for our students, especially since so many companies are now relocating to North Carolina because of the cost of living and expenses. So I think you're really going to see that start changing. I think COVID changed virtual stuff for people. So you still have access to all those companies. It's not like only North Carolina companies are coming and recruiting Duke students. We still have companies coming from West Coast, New York, all that fun stuff.
There are questions about the STEM program, about the minimum GMAT score, and I think you've covered all of that. Somebody's asked about getting on-campus jobs, and you just covered all of that extensively. I am going to ask you a question about the 25 random things.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has asked a question about how random does the 25 random things essay need to be? Any specifics to refrain from? Any specific narrative being looked for? Ajay is asking the question.
Yeah, so it can be completely random. You can talk about, I see here in the chat, you can talk about your favorite place you've traveled to, but make sure if you say my favorite place is North Carolina, make sure you explain why, because I'll sit there and say, but why? Like, why did you love North Carolina? Like, did you go to the mountains? Did you go to the beach? Like, I would have so many questions. So I think like explain things, but it can be completely random. It doesn't have to tell a story. Like, you don't have to make it tell a story, because here's the thing, when we're reading it, you'd be surprised how 25 random things does already tell a story about you as a person. So it's not like, oh, I want to make sure this story talks about how I'm an adventurous person. Like, we're going to pick that up if you're talking about hikes that you've done, excursions you've done, trips you've taken. Like, I'm going to say, like, this person's adventurous. They want to get up and go. So it can be completely random. Doesn't have to tell a certain story. You can include pictures in those things if you would like. If you want to include a link to something, sometimes, especially I see people who are dancers and trained classical dancers want to include a link of maybe a dance they've done. Make sure you just spell out that URL. We can't click on hyperlinks in your application. So just keep that in mind, but have fun with it. Like, it does not need to be so formal that you lose your personality. This is where I really do want to get to know you. So many times I get the question, especially from Indian applicants, of I come from an engineering background, I come from a consulting background. How do I differentiate myself? Is it a test score? And I'm like, no, it's not your test score. It's your essays. I want to get to know you as a person, that after I read your essay, I'm like, wow, I want to hang out with this person. I really want to meet them. And like I said, I will usually remember someone's random fact versus like a test score or something.
Thank you for this. We get this question a lot when we are helping applicants. Do early action round applicants generally get interviews?
So this year, since we've changed our interview policy, it's not that if you apply early action, that's guaranteeing you a better chance of an interview. We grant interviews all the same throughout all rounds of admission. So one round does not give you more scholarship money, better chances of things, anything like that. It is, you never know who else is applying. So.
All right. What is the average work experience required? You've already mentioned that in your slides. I think what this person wants to know is if they are at the lower end of work experience, let's say if they have no work experience or maybe 1 or 2 years work experience, how do you look at candidates like that?
Yeah. Again, this goes back to quality over quantity. So some people might only have 1 year of work, 1 or 2 years of work experience, but maybe they've had a tremendous impact in that 2-year time. And that's, great. So I think it's more of what have you achieved versus like the actual number. Much like the question of like, well, if I have 10 years of work experience, same thing, quality over quantity. Focus on that. If you have no work experience, let's say you're getting ready to graduate from undergrad, I might encourage somebody to maybe look at our pre-MBA programs, pre-experience programs. Those are our 1-year masters. That might be a better fit for you just because we do see work experience being helpful in the MBA program. So if you're fresh out of college or getting ready to be fresh out of college, it might be more beneficial to maybe look at some of our one-year programs. You can always come back and then do your MBA later, but you know, there's no required amount of work experience.
This is probably the penultimate question. What is the procedure for the application fee waiver?
Yeah, so when you open up your application, you will go to the application fee section. So once we get your contact information, everything, we're going to plug it into our system and we'll tag it. And so then when you go into the application fee waiver section, you would just put the red pen presentation. Our computer is going to check it on the back end and make sure things line up, and then you'll be approved. If it is asking you to pay a fee and you pay that fee, don't pay it. Email our team. We'll make sure to fix it on our end because we can't give you a refund, unfortunately. So if you attended this session and it's still prompting you for payment to submit your application, do not pay. Contact us. We will get you all set.
I'm just going to add to that. Please use the same email ID that you've submitted for this session. Okay, if there's a different email ID, the system is not going to recognize you. We are at 8 o'clock. We're on the dot. There are a lot of unanswered questions, Morgan. There are specific questions that people have asked about their application and their candidacy. I would encourage all of you to reach out to Duke Fuqua and ask them the questions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for doing this with us today, Morgan, and thank you everybody who attended this session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me, and best of luck in putting together your application.
Thank you, and good night.